Hello and welcome to the Arc Woman podcast. This is an exploration of womankind. Here we discuss what it is to be a woman in the modern world while utilizing ancient and modern modalities in tandem to create a bounty of health for the body, mind and spirit. Well, thank you so much, Maree, for being here today and taking the time to talk to us about ovarian cancer, which Ovarian Cancer Day was on I'm looking at my calendar, on the 8th of May. Now it's the 19th. We're a little bit late, but better late than never. I thought it was just really important to talk about ovarian cancer because it is just something so insidious and it seems to be without any symptoms. So it was really important for us to talk about it, to prevent it, because that's the main thing with any type of cancer, right, is prevention before everything else. You lead a research group at Hudson Institute, but I'd like to take us a bit further back. Can you take us to the moment when cancer research actually found you? Because I don't think oncology is definitely a calling for a lot of... Would you kind of talk about your history and what attracted you to oncology and then towards ovarian cancer specifically?
So for me, I think I have undiagnosed ADHD, I'm sure of. I think at school I could never find something that I could completely focus on, and that was my passion and that I loved, unless it was science, right? Science has so much diversity in it. Every day you go in, you're doing a different type of experiment, getting a different type of result. The answers are unknown. So I think that really appealed to me. I couldn't see myself sitting at a desk doing an office job 9 to 5. It was definitely the thrill that you get doing experiments and sticking with science. Oncology, I think for me, as you mature and you grow up, you realize that this disease burden is something that impacts us as a society. And if we're going to focus our attention on something and progress something to the point that we can make a big impact on the way that we live and human health, definitely focusing on oncology would be the way to go. Women's health was a huge thing for me. I couldn't quite understand the disparity between why certain types of diseases that impacted one sex had a lot more attention, a lot more funding, whereas these other types of women's diseases that may not have affected too many women, but women were dying from them, weren't getting that much attention. So I feel like it was just a natural progression into choosing. Maybe it chose me. I didn't choose it. Maybe it chose me.
I think that's really beautiful. Almost co-creation between you and something that you've been called towards. It kind of reminds me, have you read that book called Big Magic by, I can't remember the author, but I think that kind of reminds me of it. She's an author and she would always have people come to her and say, you've stolen my idea. And she always has this idea that like there is something out there that calls you to it as you are called towards it as well. So that's really beautiful and an unlikely story in oncology, I would say as well.
Yes, absolutely. So what's it called? Big Magic. I'm going to write this
Big
down.
Magic. Yeah.
I'm very into reading, so this will be my next.
It's a fantastic book. It's quite an inspired, creative book. And I think it is really interesting. And not a lot of people think of academics and specifically like lab work and research as a creative process, but you do have to think so creatively. And you were one of the people who found leader cells. And so we'll get to that in a second. And I can imagine you would have had to think very creatively in order to find them and then in order to find treatment to stop them from doing what they were doing. But before we get there, I just want to talk about your lab's names. Metastasis Biology and Therapeutics. It might sound a little intimidating for someone outside of the field. For those who hear metastasis and know only what it means as cancer spreading, can you paint a picture of what you and your team are actually doing day in and day out and what that name actually means and represents for you and your lab?
I think the unique part of our approach or looking at something like metastasis is that it isn't just cancer cells in isolation. We're kind of looking at the whole microenvironment or the whole environment that a cancer cell spreads to. So metastasis isn't just a passive process. The cancer cells will shape the healthy tissue, and what the healthy tissue is doing in turn to receive those cancer cells is something that we're really interested in as well. So we've got a little bit of a holistic approach to looking at how cancer spreads. Metastatic disease is the greatest cause of cancer-related death across all types of cancers. So, if you can catch your cancer in its primary stage where it hasn't sort of moved around the body, you've got a greatest chance of treatment and survival. But the challenge that we face is that most of the times these cancer cells will break out, talk to the healthy cells. Somehow the healthy cells are like, yeah, come on in. But we want to stop that from happening.
Okay, that's a really friendly way of explaining it. And there is what's his name? He's a doctor. He was one of the main doctors who brought the gut to the forefront in like 2010 and 2012. Remember when it was like this huge obsession? And he explained cancer cells as these cells that forgot that there was something around them. And they didn't realize that they had a whole community and a whole body of cells because they had lost all of their receptor sites and they thought they were alone. So they did what anything that is alive does, and it creates its own community because it doesn't want to be alone. And so that's what it does. And then for some reason in ovarian cancer, we'll get to this as well, it's so interesting, it convinces healthy cells to be cancerous.
Yeah.
It's almost like a cancer cult in a way. It's like, come join us in a way.
It does, yeah. Yeah. You never like to say you never like to say that a cancer cell is smart, but somehow,
it is a sign of intelligence in a way of its ignorance. It's ignorant to the body around it, and so it almost wants to create its own body. I think we forget that cells have all of the DNA to create its own body in a way. Yep. And so we could see from a different perspective that that's what cancer cells are attempting to do, but to the detriment of the actual body that is there. If we could step into your lab for a day, what would we see? What does a typical day look and feel like for you and your team?
So it varies. I guess I started off by saying I could never see myself sitting at a desk and doing desk work, but alas, here I am. As you progress up the career ladder, you are more desk bound. So for me, it's basically a lot of writing up the studies that we have done, a lot of engagement in a sense of advocacy, getting out there talking about the research that we're working on, grant writing. So this year, I think I am currently onto my 4th grant. Despite being funded last year, I think I got 3 grants last year, I'm still constantly writing up grants to get sufficient amount of funding to be able to, nurture new career scientists that are coming into the ovarian cancer field, grow the lab, grow our knowledge, which is kind of like love going in the lab. And I wish that's where I could go back to. For the postdoctorals that we have in the lab, a lot of the time is spent doing experiments. So every day it's something completely different. It may be engaging with our patients to consent them to get clinical samples, dealing with their clinical samples, doing all different types of testing. And also we have a really strong focus on teaching as well, which is something that I kind of didn't see myself naturally being a teacher. But when you see someone's passion coming in and their eyes light up and they suddenly all of a sudden get what we're doing and get what this is all about, I think that really drives the work that you're doing as well. So we've got 2 honors students. I've got a work experience student as well at the moment. So imparting that sort of enthusiasm towards science, enthusiasm towards something that is a horrible subject to work on, cancer, is really great.
It sounds like you've created such a beautiful, sustained ecosystem of hope and enthusiasm in the most unlikeliest of places. I think that's absolutely beautiful. You've spoken about wanting to give women hope for a future free from this disease. Can you share why that hope matters for you personally? Where did this come from for you?
I guess when I would first go out and engage with the public or talk about ovarian cancer, I would quite often just rattle off the statistics. And I think any researcher would be well versed in what the statistics are surrounding their disease. And it wasn't until I started engaging with the community and you get this sense of like all of a sudden it clicks. Quite often as researchers, you're up there and you're rattling off statistics without reckoning that this is an actual human being and this is something that someone is actually going through at a moment in time. And I had 2 consumers, and they're called consumers. So these are patients with a lived experience of ovarian cancer that were my advocates for my grant. So they would tell me how to better communicate some of the themes that I had, what this work really means to them or the relevance to them. And then when you get the chance to have that perspective, everything changes. So I think you want to give hope to people because people put so much hope into what you're doing. And by way of example, we run a biobank here, and this is a story that I will share all the time. We run a biobank. There's no way of knowing whether you have ovarian cancer other than having surgery, right? So these women we will approach prior to surgery saying, on the off chance that you have ovarian cancer, are you willing to donate your tissue? And I wouldn't even know. When I have the cold, it's all about me. I don't think about anyone else. These are women going in to see whether they've got cancer or not. And someone random is approaching them saying, can we take some of your sample? They know that the work that we do isn't going to change their outcome. But 100% of the time, these women have donated their samples so that their daughters, people that they don't know, or women just all around the world don't have to go through what they've gone through. So when you've got someone that is so hopeful and believes in the power of research, you can't do anything but believe in it. Yeah.
Wow. That's absolutely incredible. And I love the example that you just said. When I'm sick, I don't care about anyone else, but
No.
we have this like really intimate moment where we're saying, hey, if we do have cancer, can we take your ovary out and like store it here and do lab tests on it? It is kind of a weird ask, but I'm not surprised that 100% of women are like, yes, absolutely. Like, don't even worry about it. Take it from me so you can make sure nothing else happens to other women. So we're talking around ovarian cancer. I want to get into ovarian cancer. So every year, more than 1,600 Australian women are diagnosed and over 1,000 lose their lives. Yet it's a disease we rarely hear about in public conversation. Why do you think the silence around ovarian cancer exists specifically? Because there's a lot of talk around hysterectomies. There's a lot of talk around endo, PCOS, breast cancer. I can rattle off all of the other health concerns we have, but ovarian cancer is really down the bottom of the barrel, and not a lot of women actually even know that you can get ovarian cancer.
Yeah, I think it's quite complicated when you think about it. The times have really shifted. When we originally would go out and talk about the disease, a lot of people would be like, oh, I've had a pap smear, I can't get ovarian cancer, or what is that? Didn't know. Also, the demographic that it targets is usually women that are premenopausal or going through menopause. And a lot of cultures don't like talking about things that are below the belt. Like, it's kind of taboo for some reason that, you know, we don't often share those health-related issues because they're considered to be private, I guess. That's shifted so much since I first started talking, 10 years ago to now. People will talk openly about, things that impact them that are below the belt, and they're free to talk about them. So that's a great shift that I've seen. But also, on the flip side, you need to think about ovarian cancer is diagnosed quite often at a late stage. Majority of our patients are undergoing really intense chemotherapy. They're getting their diseased organs, which is, their ovaries, their uterus, etc., removed with surgery, then hitting, really harsh treatments. And then we're kind of asking them to get out there and advocate about their experience, because you're kind of still taking time to process what you're going through, what your body's going through, what the implications of this disease is. You go on and do a Google search and the statistics are horrible. Your chances of beating ovarian cancer are literal coin toss. They're 50%. And we kind of expect people to share their experience when they're going through something that's so raw. And unfortunately, again, 50% of our patients do pass away from the disease. So we don't have people out there to advocate for ovarian cancer and share their stories. And that's why anytime I've met some of these incredible women that get out there and have just gone to like a therapy the day before, and then the next day are out there talking about their stories, it's incredible. But like for some people, you can't. They're still processing what they're going through, and you can't expect them to share it. And I think that's probably where it's really hard in the ovarian cancer space to get that awareness up there, because it's a whirlwind.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's called the silent killer, right? So before people can talk about it, they're 50% more likely to pass away from this. And I guess another reason why is because there's no obvious progression that is really, really obvious to women. So do you mind telling us about the progression of what the disease actually might look like from a symptomatic level, if there are any
Yeah.
symptoms at all? What does that actually look like from a woman? I'm noticing some weird symptoms to a diagnosis. Do you mind walking us through what that looks like for women?
Yeah, I guess it's quite difficult because majority of the symptoms that are associated with ovarian cancer that we as women are told to look for are actually symptoms that are associated with going through premenopause or menopause, etc. I think a lot of the symptoms that we as women are told to look for, again, are symptoms that we have every 28 days when we get our periods. So it might be a little bit of bloating, a little bit of tiredness, generally feeling unwell. Maybe I got to pee a little bit more than I used to. I might have changes in my bowel habits. Again, as a woman, getting a period every 28 days, you're going to experience one or more of them. When you go through menopause, perimenopause, anyone that's experienced that will be like, what is going on? You have no idea. Yeah, these symptoms occur at a late stage as well. So there really isn't anything out there. And I know as a scientist, I probably shouldn't say it, but the greatest thing that we as human beings and as women have is our intuition. And quite often we are running around doing things for so many other people, donating our energy everywhere. If you can take the time and trust your intuition, if something does not feel right, you need to advocate for yourself. And if something, your body knows. And I think that's our greatest strength that we have at this point in time is your intuition and really advocating for yourself, listening to your body, listening to these changes. And, don't sit through your discomfort. If you're not comfortable, your body's telling you you're not comfortable for a reason, go out there and talk to a doctor. If your doctor won't listen, find another one that will. Yeah.
I think that's the thing. I think a lot of women go, oh, there's all of these weird symptoms. Oh, it's probably just perimenopause. Oh, it's probably just my period. And then they go to a doctor finally and say, I have these issues. And their doctor says, that's totally fine. I've heard of stories of women in perimenopause saying, I've been bleeding for 28 days. I've had a period for 28 days. And the doctors are like, oh, that's completely normal. It's like, whoa, that is absolutely not normal. And you don't have loyalty to your doctor, basically. I think a lot of women think that. It's like, if you feel like something is wrong and you want to move on to another doctor who's going to take you seriously, please do so. And so I guess maybe many women have heard of the CA125 blood test. We know it measures a substance that can be higher in women with ovarian cancer. How helpful is this test in real life, and why isn't it used as a simple screening tool for everyone in this life stage for ovarian cancer?
So CA125 is a marker that comes up when you have inflammation. It may come up when you've got other types of inflammation within your body, like endo, etc. So it's not a reliable way of detecting whether you have ovarian cancer or not. It could lead you down the path of perhaps you may have it, but right now where we're at, there is no adequate way of diagnosing ovarian cancer or detecting it at an early stage. So if you have high CA125, you're getting a little bit of pressure around that area, you may be sent for a transvaginal ultrasound or an ultrasound. Again, they're not going to detect anything unless the mass is something that's sizable that you can visually see. And usually when something's quite big, it's a little bit too far progressed. So yeah, you'll be in those later stages. So there isn't any blood-based marker that we can really say definitively yes or no, you have ovarian cancer or not. So CA125 is a good guide, but not the ultimate solution.
Yeah, to finish what you were saying, we don't have a good definitive pre-screening tool yet. I would like to say that. I think it is coming, and I think it's totally possible. Going on from that, what are the most important risk factors that women should know about? Things like BRCA mutations and family history. Are there other ones that we might not expect that are associated with the development of ovarian cancer in women?
So ovarian cancer is a term that's given to 30 different types of cancer. So we just it's an umbrella term. There are so many different subtypes, and they're all kind of named based upon the tissue that they come from. BRCA, we have heard of quite often. Women that have BRCA mutations account for about 10% of ovarian cancer incidences. So it's not a traditional hallmark of if you have this mutation, you will get ovarian cancer. That's not the case. Contraceptive pill use lowers your risk. I think there's some studies that are out there showing that if you take the pill, that you have a lower risk of developing ovarian cancer. But where we're at with this research and where we're at with our understanding of ovarian cancer is we're not entirely sure what gives certain people a greater predisposition to having this type of disease. And by way of example, I think it was only about 10 or so years ago that we discovered that ovarian cancer doesn't actually come from the ovary. It's coming from the fallopian tube. And the cells from the fallopian tube move towards the ovary, which is, that nutrient-rich environment that sustains life, right? And it's also sustaining those cancer cells. So that wasn't until about 10 years ago that we figured that out. So we're a little bit too far behind catching up, but understanding the disease.
That's so interesting that it starts in the fallopian tube and it moves towards the ovaries, because it's kind of the opposite way that things move, because there are these tiny little villi that kind of brush everything down the fallopian tube. How do these cancer cells progress up the fallopian tube, and how far away are they? Can they be kind of like the base of fallopian tube next to the uterus, or are they kind of more likely closer to the ovary? No one knows.
So no one's had the ability to track it in a person or see like what are the tiny signals that cause the transformation of a normal cell to turn into an ovarian cancer cell, and how it traverses. I think other than your little cilia or your villi that move things along, there's also gradients, so chemical gradients that will attract certain types of cells towards them, and signals that will call certain cells towards them. But again, that's part of why we sort of look at things from a holistic point of view, that it's this synergy between what the cancer cell is doing, but also what the healthy cell is doing to receive those cancer cells. I think that's really important when you're looking at a cancer as a whole.
And how the cancer actually works in the environment. And I guess that's why ovarian cancer is so, in of itself, I guess, you're saying it's 30 different types of cancers, and they all have different discrepancies in how they behave in that same environment, and therefore they probably all have different risk as well. So so when someone is diagnosed with ovarian cancer, first of all, how do we diagnose ovarian cancer? And then what does the treatment pathway look like? And does that woman find out what type of ovarian cancer she has? And then that determines what treatment and therefore risk, and I guess the pace of treatment as well. Do you mind talking to us about what that looks like?
So as I said, there's no way to accurately or adequately diagnose ovarian cancer other than surgery. So you may have an idea that CA125's come up, or you've got certain growths or masses that are seen on a transvaginal ultrasound or on an ultrasound. But in order to define what type of ovarian cancer you have, whether it is cancer or not, you need to have surgery. And quite often it's quite a drastic surgical intervention. So you'll go in, and it really depends on who's treating you. Some surgeons like to treat with therapy before extracting the tumor. Some like to extract the tumor and then treat with therapy. It just depends on, I guess, your level of health and how they think you'll recover from both of the interventions, because they're huge.
Massive.
The surgery is usually removal of ovaries and any diseased tissues. So sometimes, because it's so widely disseminated, you'll have to have resections within your bowel or anywhere that the cancer can be found. And there's like a very short time period to recover from this massive surgery, and it's straight onto chemotherapy. So the way that we treat ovarian cancer hasn't changed in over 30 years since the introduction of platinum and taxane-based therapies. What these drugs is a chemotherapy won't discriminate between a healthy cell and a cancer cell. And there comes a point in time where the cancer cells have developed mechanisms to bypass what that treatment's doing. So it will just keep attacking the healthy cells and not the cancer cells. You've probably heard of precision medicines. I think that's all around. Precision medicine is a type of medicine that will specifically only target the cancer cell, and we're not quite there with ovarian cancer. So despite the fact that our patients have had surgery, have had 6 months worth of chemotherapy, in 80% of the women that we see, the cancer comes back. And it's usually within a really short period of time, so about 18 months. And this time, the disease is resistant to the original therapy that they received, and they're just left with these limited treatment options. So we have not progressed really well with treatments for ovarian cancer.
So my grandmother, if she had ovarian cancer and if I was diagnosed today, the treatment pathway has not changed that much at all.
No.
Right. So that's why I guess 88% of women with breast cancer don't relapse and they survive for, I think, 3 to 5 years beyond. For ovarian cancer, it's 30% or 50%. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Would you say that ovarian cancer specifically is aggressive, or would you say we just don't know proper treatment options for it in order to treat it and prevent relapse?
I think majority of the times it's discovered at such a late stage. So most of the patients are in late stage disease when they first find out they have the disease. And my good friend and consumer advocate once spoke and said that it's kind of like someone's throwing glitter all throughout her internal cavities. And, you know, we know how difficult it is to remove every trace of glitter if you've put it somewhere. That's exactly what it is with ovarian cancer. Our surgeons do an incredible job of trying to resect these tumours out of the body, and we then will hit our patients with these intensive therapies. And most of the time, women are told that there's no evidence of disease, but the particular cells that we're working on are the ones that are hiding and then in turn come back. Yeah.
Right. And I guess moving on from that, let's talk about something that gives us a little bit more hope, because I'm imagining everyone listening to this is like, this is quite dire and horrible, but your research is giving me a lot of hope, at least, and I'm sure a lot of women out there. You're the first scientist to discover and describe these so-called leader cells in ovarian cancer. Can you explain what leader cells are and how did you even spot them in the first place? Because when I came across this research, I think it was this time last year, I was like, what? This is amazing. Do you mind telling us about that? And it must have felt so amazing to find this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess we were kind of really interested in what was being expressed by a cancer cell at the point of time that it was interacting with the healthy tissue. And we had some of the tech, this is part of my, again, ADHD brain, had some of this new tech that was available in the lab, and it could allow you to look at things in real time. So we were really interested in narrowing in on that window of time that cancer cells were first interacting with healthy tissue. And generally, you tend to think of cancer cells as all being the same type of cell. Within a cancer cell, it's a tumor. It's what's called heterogeneous. So there's all different types of cancer cells that make up that bulk tumor. And we discovered, quite like what happens during development, there's a certain group of cells that get out there and lay down the tracks for the rest of their cells to follow. And these were called cancer leader cells. The cancer leader cells are the ones that are responsible for disease invasion. So they will go out there, scout for the rest of the follower. They're called follower cells that follow the leaders, scout for them, say, okay, we've created a little bit of a safe environment. Come on, guys, come in and invade this healthy tissue. So discovering them was really cool, because we then also found that a lot of the therapies that we currently use actually enrich for the leader cell subset. So while your follower cells or the bulk tumors responding really well to therapy and getting rid of it, the leader cells are actually increasing in their number and increasing in their stability. But because they're such a small population, you kind of don't notice it until the diseases come back again.
Right. So I can almost imagine this fungus works like this, which I think is really interesting.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Candida albicans works this way. Isn't that fascinating? So they lay the groundwork, create a safe environment, and the follower cells happen. And so when we get rid of leader cells, that slows down the progression. That can even stunt the progression of the ovarian cancer in that tissue. And do you mind talking about what actually slows down leader cells specifically?
So there isn't anything out there that can specifically slow down a leader cell. we've discovered a unique marker that is expressed by the leader cell and have developed a novel therapy directed towards that unique marker that's expressed by the leader cell. And we know that when you suppress that particular marker, leader cells don't have the ability to shape the immune microenvironment. We get infiltration of more of the positive immune cells that actually can say, hang on, there's a foreign entity here, and the body's natural system can do a good job of clearing up the tumor. Likewise, when you suppress leader cells, their cells are rendered invasion incompetent. So that just means that they can't spread anywhere. And our body's natural system does a really good job of mopping up those extra cancer cells.
Do you mind talking about that interaction between leader cells and our immune cells? Because I don't think a lot of people understand within oncology that your body already has a cancer cleanup system.
Yes.
But how cancer cells are set up, it almost makes them immune to the immune cells cleaning them up. Do you mind talking about how leader cells interact with our white blood cells and what that marker might mean in connection? I think you explained it a little bit there, but if you could get a little bit technical and nerdy, that would be great.
Yes, please. I could draw a diagram, but it's a podcast, so I can't draw a diagram.
You can give me a diagram and I can put it up for people watching this. And I would love for you to just feed my curiosity on this, because when I was reading through, I was like, wow, this is fascinating.
My manic drawings, yes. So it's kind of like a little bit difficult to describe. So your leader cells build what's called a fortress around them, or a immune depleted niche, and they will call in what are called cancer-associated fibroblasts. So they'll call in these fibroblasts, which are normal cells but are associated with the cancer, to build a thick, impenetrable layer around them, like creating like a little fortress.
Yeah.
Then they'll send out some of these negative cells. So there are T cells that are called T regulatory cells. They are bad cells. They'll send them around the barrier. They'll create what are called chemokine or cytokine gradients. So there will be gradients that will say, come in, good immune cells. We've got a lovely environment for you. So they recruit them. Then they trap them and they'll kill them off. So they're using the body's own immune system to kind of get rid of the good immune response by tricking the body's immune system. Yeah.
So that really speaks to what we were just saying before, that these cancer cells don't recognize themselves as a part of this system. So they've created their own fortress to protect their own community in a way, and they're seeing the body as a threat. That is so fascinating. That is so interesting and scary. That's very scary.
It is, isn't it? But it's kind of like on the flip side, do they see themselves as the enemy, or is the normal body the enemy? Yeah, they probably don't have a sense of self. Yeah.
No, or maybe they do, but they don't see themselves as a part of the body in of itself, because they've almost lost receptor sites and they've lost the ability to cohabitate with the body. That is so fascinating. You're also leading a new project to disrupt cancer's safe zones and developing a new tool called the NICE score to predict a woman's risk of relapse. So do you mind explaining to us what this new project to disrupt this safe zone, is that the safe zone you've just described to us, this fortress? Okay, that's so interesting. Okay.
So, we're really interested in understanding how the cancer cell has recruited normal cells to create this microenvironment that's protective. And what's really exciting about this new project is that rather than looking at the disease when it's come back, we're looking at the point of treatment. So what is our treatment actually doing? Because we know the cancer comes back in 80% of women. At the point that we're intervening with treatments, what is the cancer doing to bypass these treatments? What is the cancer doing to create these little niches that enable its survival? The goal of this is we could potentially look at cancer patients and see how in real time they're responding to their particular treatment. We can say that this line of treatment that you're giving them is actually going to cause them more harm than good, but also look at new ways of invigorating our natural immune system, or invigorating some of these therapies that have worked in other types of cancers to work in ovarian cancer, by getting a little bit of the understanding of what the body's doing in response to therapy. And how it's doing something that stops the treatments from being effective.
Okay, so that kind of sounds like precision medicine, or moving towards
Yeah.
precision medicine for ovarian cancer, going, okay, let's see what these cells are actually doing. Does that depend on you getting a sample though? Do you have to get a sample from that woman? So is that like a laparoscopy where you go in and find a sample from those cancer cells? Or are you taking the tissue out after surgery and then doing tests and then figuring out that woman's NICE score from that sample?
Yeah, so majority of the times, all of the tissue that we're working on is tissue that's donated from our patients. So we are incredibly, incredibly privileged to be supported by the incredible gynecological oncology team here at Monash. You've got to understand that these surgeons are going in, doing their surgery, which is quite intensive, but they would take the time to support research as well. So they'll stop and collect tissue for us to be able to use in the lab. So we either will get tissue prior to treatment. So a patient may have had a little bit of a surgical intervention and the surgeon's gone in, taken some of the tissue and said, oh, I think it would be best if we treat first with neoadjuvant chemotherapy and then we'll go in with surgery afterwards, so we could get pre and post-surgical intervention. Sometimes it will just be at the point of that big surgery, we'll get the tissue, but everything that we're looking at, the response of the healthy cells, the immune system, the cancer cells, is in the living body, not in a test tube. So yeah.
And going back to that main point that you made, that we are talking about people here. And I think that's just something that Monash specifically is doing so beautifully. All of the amazing research coming out of Monash specifically for women's health is just absolutely incredible. Going on from this, your former lab head, Dr. Stevens, has been working on a world first early detection test for ovarian cancer. And you've been a really vocal advocate for that work. If caught early, survival rates jump from 30%, which is quite dire, to over 90%. So the stakes couldn't be higher. What do you understand about what this test is, and what could it mean for the landscape if it became something a GP could routinely offer to women?
I think as Australian researchers, so I'll advocate for any form of research that's in the early detection test space. As Australian researchers, the Ovarian Cancer Research Foundation, I believe, has funded 4 or 5 projects that are now very close to commercial translation or are in commercial stages for early detection tests. There's 2 groups over in Queensland. Michelle Hill is with a company called Prosic Bio, who's advancing one. There's Dr. Carlos Solomonson, I think is his surname. I hope they haven't butchered that as well. That is advancing another. And you may have heard of Dr. Caroline Ford over in, I think she's Uni, New South Wales. She does a lot with the Camilla and Mark campaign, who are raising funds for their early detection test work. So I think as Australians, we're doing an incredible job in filling that void with this early detection test work. Again, getting something out there that is going to 100% of the time not fail or not miss someone is an incredibly difficult thing. Like I said to you before, we don't know how a fallopian tube cell switches into a cancer cell, how long the process takes. So in order to have a marker or a set of markers that pick something up accurately 100% of the time across all of the population is a really, really, really hard task. And again, you know, if we get an early detection test, survival rates sit at about 90%, right? It's the ultimate goal of anyone that's working in research.
Do you mind telling us a little bit about what these ovarian tests look like? So you said there's 3 to 4 groups. Are they working on something similar and they're working on different dimensions of the same test, or they're working on different tests altogether?
I think they're all different tests. Yeah, everyone's picked, I don't know too much about it, to be honest, but everyone's picked a different set of markers that will indicate an early transformative event in ovarian cancer that can be screened across the majority of the population. So some of them may be blood tests, and I think the angle that majority of people would want is a blood test, because you're more likely to get people getting a blood test done rather than something that's done via a pap smear. Yeah, it just really depends on the method of development. And currently, I think where some of the projects sit is that they're looking at where they build up the statistical power around the test is also using them as triage tests. So as I said to you before, you have to go in for surgery to be diagnosed with ovarian cancer. If you used a triage test, you could say, okay, this patient really needs to go in for surgery because it's more likely that this is cancer rather than being a simple surgical intervention.
All right, thank you for explaining that. And I would agree that the amount of women I know who don't get pap smears regularly because it is an uncomfortable process, and now we're seeing at-home pap smears which are making it more accessible. So, and I think it is interesting that they're doing different tests. I think it's almost better in a way because we have multiple hands on different aspects of it, and then someone can probably do a meta-analysis or systematic review to review all of the information and then figure out which one is most applicable. So that's really interesting, and really interesting that's all happening in Australia.
Yes, we do. I think we do punch above our weight or whatever the saying is. But yeah, we do. It's incredible.
Yeah, but this needs to be funded, and ovarian cancer research, as you said before, receives far less funding than other cancers. What has it been like to build a research program around a disease that just does not get the same attention as diseases more likely found in male bodies as opposed to women's?
I think every health-related disorder is incredibly important, whether it affects males or females. If it impacts your quality of life, it deserves attention. I think there are a lot of conditions that we now have that are society-based diseases. I guess our lifestyle really impacts on a lot of health outcomes that are called major disease burdens now. So I think as well as your physical research, getting out there in the lab and looking at something, we need better education around healthy lifestyle choices, healthy eating, mental health, looking at our bodies as a whole, I guess. And I think they're incredibly important. Advocating for ovarian cancer and increasing awareness does a really good job in also attracting funding. So I know that at least with our work, our approach is really unique. The studies that we're doing are really world-class studies. So although it's difficult to put those concepts onto paper and ask for funding, it always ends up coming because it is something that it's needed and can be applied to other types of cancers and is generally important for society as a whole. So get out there and talk about, open these conversations, open the lines of communication, get people more interested in, we can make the change, right?
Yes. Yeah, we definitely can. And just going back to that person experience that you had before, and I love that you just said that one of your previous consumers, you said, is now a close friend. What is that like to work within oncology for a cancer that kills so many women? How do you carry that and still maintain a functioning lab and also deal with the sensitivity of this issue? That must be a lot to juggle and a lot to feel and a lot to process a lot of the time. Like, what is that like for you as a researcher and also someone who is a human first and foremost?
Yeah. Do we have time for a therapy session now? I feel like, listen, as researchers, you're quite often asked to have lived experience people or consumer advocates on your grants, but I think sometimes as researchers also we don't get given adequate mechanisms to deal with these relationships that you do form with women that are living with a disease. I would never go back on forming a connection with them because it gives your work an incredible sense of purpose. So the two consumer advocates that I had on my research grant, it was Sarah Tidy and Leanne Flynn. Sarah passed away and Leanne passed away, I think, in September 2023. And we would go to events with each other. We would talk about her lived experience and how research is helping her. Just a natural flow with each other. And then it came a point where Leanne had passed away, and this is a family's grief that you're going through, and this is a connection that I had with someone that I saw as a friend, but I'm not family, I'm a researcher, so it's really difficult. I think I kind of went a little bit introverted with public speaking or getting out there and engaging in events because I kind of didn't know if that grief was mine. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. Yeah. To feel, am I allowed to have this grief as a researcher who wasn't necessarily a very important person in this person's life? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, there's a huge area where we need to better support people in research, or better support people that are engaging in research. You do want to value the perspective of the community that you're serving, but also, like, who do I go to talk to about, is this normal to be feeling like this? Yeah, because you have to take it on, don't you? Or it's disingenuous if I don't care about these people with all of my heart, then like it's tokenistic having them on research grants. So yeah, I think it's an interesting area, and probably one that we could do a little bit better in supporting our researchers.
Yeah, ovarian cancer seems quite personal and intimate, and so I imagine that as a researcher you have a personal and intimate relationship with the women that you are fundamentally researching on, and fundamentally hopefully positively influencing as well. Going on from that, for the women listening to this who are thinking, I've noticed some changes that you've suggested, and my intuition is telling me that something is up. What are the next steps that you would highly recommend to the women listening if they are suspecting that they might have ovarian cancer? And what does that look like? What would you recommend, like the next 3 to 4 steps that they should do?
So I am always like terrible at explaining things to doctors. I have no idea why. If you notice symptoms, take the time to just maybe write them down. It would be something that you can present them with. Just say, over my cycle or over this period of time, I've noticed this particular type of behavior. It doesn't sit right with me. You can ask them if you suspect that you've got a mass, or you suspect that something's wrong. You can ask them for an ultrasound, or to refer you to an ultrasound. Again, I think it's important at any stage of your life to have a really good dialogue and open relationship with your healthcare provider, that you feel comfortable enough to tell them how things are changing in your body or how you feel. So again, other than saying trust your intuition and advocate for yourself, that's where we are.
Thank you very much. Was there anything else that you wanted to leave us with? And do you want to maybe plug your research lab, and where maybe if anyone listening, if they had a spare couple $1 million, if they could fund you guys?
Please, yes. So yeah, we're just based at the Hudson Institute of Medical Research, which is in Melbourne, Victoria. I love talking to people. So if there is, if you're interested in what we're doing, we can arrange for you to come into the lab, come and have a tour, see what we're doing in real time. I would encourage you that if you hear this conversation, or something about it resonates with you, share something that you learned from this podcast with someone else. Open up a conversation, never know where they may take it. And that power of community, that power of outreach, that we can sort of spread the word. And if you have $1 million to spare, it would be, yes, amazing. Yeah, no, I think more so the power of communicating with each other, forming those connections, making someone feel comfortable enough to share. Oh, hang on a second, this didn't feel right, is where our power really lies.
Right, beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to listen to this episode. If you loved it, please remember to like, subscribe, and send to a loved one. If you want to learn more from ARC Women, please check out the website at arcwomen.com.au, where you can find a plethora of offerings like charts, masterclasses, courses, and organic clothing. You can also head over to patreon.com/arcwomen or substack.com/arcwomen to join the community. I hope you have a really beautiful morning, afternoon, or evening wherever you are in the world, and I will see you on the next episode.